How about pictures? Any sign of Peter Parker around there? Nuts! Just when I need him the most. Get your coat, Foswell. We're off to see that webhead get his lumps. I hope Kraven demolishes him. Welcome back and welcome to Season 2, Episode 22 of Me and My Friend Pete. Another Donuts and Dimes production. The podcast where we explore all things the Amazing Spider-Man comic book series. I'm your host, Peter Parker's persnickety pal, Gerald. This week, we've got flashbacks, we've got hatchbacks, we've got Gwen and MJ throwing it back, and the return of the man who's bull elephant strong, and believe me, he will not hesitate to remind you, Kraven the Hunter. He's crashing parties, he's kidnapping sons, he's hemming up millionaires, he's shooting nipple lasers, and throwing backhands that will make Goldie proud. If you know, you know. And he's been itching for a rematch with the King of Swing from Forest Hills, Queens. You know Spidey's gonna give him all he wants. And we've got me. We've got you. We've got, no further ado, we've got the Amazing Spider-Man number 47 in the hands of the Hunter. Let's swing!
Me and my best friend Pete, old adventures, new critiques. He spins webs, I spin yarns, kinda kooky, be forewarned. Look out, it's me and my friend Pete.
The credits. A swinging super special Spidey saga by Stan the Man Lee and John Romita. That's the senior. Abetted and lettered by Sam Ghostham Rosen. The cover. Not a lot to say about the cover on this one. In the center beneath the title, The Amazing Spider-Man. In midnight blue and red, we see Kraven the Hunter in his standard getup, smiling, his eyes thin slits, his hair slicked back, in his basic hodgepodge of a costume, standing atop the symbol of the spider, a neck clutched in his right fist. All around him, we get miniature Spider-Men in different poses. One spraying webbing at him, one hanging upside down, a web line in each hand, two lunging at the villain, one crouched. This is all in a white negative space. Stage left of Kraven, we get a screen caption box in midnight blue with goldenrod lettering. Would you believe? Kraven the Hunter. Let's get into it. Page 1 opens to the usual banner, The Amazing Spider-Man. And a full-on flashback. A large goldenrod yellow caption box points down towards all sorts of action as it reads, Worry not, frantic one. If this tantalizing tableau makes you feel as though you've just walked in at the middle of a movie, that's the whole idea. It's supposed to arouse your interest, excite your curiosity, and titillate your thirst for the unexpected. However, now that we got you to read this far, we'd better admit that it's a flashback scene, showing an incident that occurred just a few months ago while the Green Goblin was still flying high. So let's join the party and see what's shaking, sweetie. And the tableau? Spider-Man, suited and booted in the classic red and blue, falling from the sky towards the Siberian Saki Sippin Stalker with the slick back hair. Kraven the Hunter. Leopard print pants? On. Lion's mane vest? On. Ballet shoes? On. And the right foot tiptoed as Spidey connects with a falling right that sends the Hunter's jaw north and his body teetering off the edge of the ledge. His right big toe is probably gripping for dear life. But worried, Kraven is not. He shouts, If that's the best you can do, masked man, the victory is as good as mine. But wait, there's more. Rocketing above the scene on his gray goblin glider, purple pointy boots on, purple gloves, pink underwear vest, and nightcap on, lime green tights and sleeves, pointy-eared goblin mask, Cheshire grin on. The Green Goblin is on the scene. Both fists clenched, his right raised in triumph, he watches the events unfold between the two combatants thinking, Spider-Man thinks Kraven is fighting him just for the sheer love of battle. But little does the web-slinging fool realize that the Green Goblin has promised to pay the Hunter $20,000 for the death of Spider-Man. We turn the page. Page 2 opens with a caption box. Even as they fought, Kraven was so obsessed with the thought of the $20,000 he had been promised that he could barely concentrate on the matter at hand. In the $20K, a bounty the nefarious Green Goblin put out on our hero, Remember, with inflation, this is nearly $200,000 in today's money. That said, we get a shot of Kraven with the upper hand, literally as he holds Spidey by the mouth and jaw with his right hand easily, peering over his own shoulder at a fleeing Green Goblin. He thinks that the money is as good as his, and the Green Goblin knows it before our hero begins to fight back, stunning Kraven with his strength.
Then, moments later,
Spidey, taking advantage of Kraven's lack of focus, manages to get out of Dodge relatively unscathed as the Hunter shouts to us and no one that he's proven he's the Spider's master. He's going to finish the hero in the next round, and when he meets the Green Goblin's messenger, he's going to demand half of the money up front.
And so,
Kraven does exactly that. He heads to a secret lair in the gutter between panels, Chameleon's hideout when visiting New York to be sure, and meets with a man in green slacks, brown loafers, an SJB trench coat, and a stylish gray fedora with an orange band whose face is cloaked in shadow. Kraven demands his first payment. The shadowy figure doesn't oblige. He says when Spidey's dead, Kraven will get his money, not a moment before. A bit odd since we know the Green Goblin cut $20,000 worth of bills in half and paid a gang with it up front once, telling the men they'd receive the other half when the Spider was dead. So why he wouldn't pay a man who would have much more success than a bunch of random goons is just a testament to the madness of the Goblin. Even he hustles backwards on occasion. Either way, his lack of payment frustrates Kraven, who wants to know who the hell the Goblin thinks he is. The shadowy figure turns his back to Kraven and, jerking a thumb at himself, tells the man not to take it out on him, that he's just the go-between. If Kraven's got issues, he needs to take it up with the Green Goblin himself. Kraven, his low-set eyes ablaze, says he's going to do better than that. When he's done with Spidey, the Goblin will be his next great hunt. The go-between is unbothered. He tells Kraven he's living in a fool's paradise and gets ghost because nobody can beat the Green Goblin. Kraven is incensed.
"Get out! Tell him to pay me, or he dies!" But no sooner did the unknown emissary depart than
Kraven's put his superior tracking skills to work, tailing the shadowy figure to a mansion in the middle of who knows where. Crouched on a sturdy tree branch, he thinks following this lackey was child's play. When the man contacts the Green Goblin, he, Kraven, will be there to get his money and his revenge.
Nefarious note. In case you don't remember this stirring sequence from issue number 15 or number 34, Kraven's last two appearances, it's because we didn't show it. After all, we can't build the whole bit in every yarn. Sneaky Stan.
So we know now that this never took place in the pages of comics, and I love that. I love the idea that things are going on that we don't get to see. If it's done right, it can lead to some great storytelling. It's done right here. Back to.
But as the long, uneventful evening wore on,
in the final panel, Kraven still perched on that tree branch outside of the mansion's window, while inside, we get a glimpse of who the go-between was. Of course it's Norman Osborn, the actual Green Goblin, the red waves on his head spinning like a hurricane, and he's in a purple robe and green ascot, fashion never taking a rest, even when he's alone at home. Kraven stares at the man, probably completely impressed with the style on display, thinking,
no sign of the Goblin. He must not be meeting him tonight. But at least I learned that his mouthpiece is Norman Osborn, the rich chemical manufacturer.
We haven't learned yet what exactly Oscorp does that made Norman so wealthy, but now we know he's a chemical manufacturer, so it's a safe bet to say the man's got ties to government agencies, healthcare, maybe food manufacturers, if we're talking about preservation. According to Statista.com, the chemical industry shipped upwards of $700 billion in 2021, so it's safe to say Norman Osborn is caking, and Kraven knows it.
The Goblin must be bigger than I thought, to have a millionaire like him serving as his flunky. Too bad Kraven never read issue number 40 like we did, or he'd know that Osborn himself was the Goblin. Right, Tiger?
3 opens with a caption box.
Finally, you all remember Kraven's last fight with Old Webhead. As luck would have it, the result was somewhat different from the way he had planned.
We get a Spidey right hook as he puts Kraven down with a knockout punch, shouting that this hunt is over. This fight took place back in ASM number 34.
The Thrill of the Hunt.
Or
Home Alone 82, Beekman Street Brawl.
Here on Me and My Friend Pete. I suggest a listen.
And so, our fearless flashback comes to an end as Kraven, unaided and unpaid by the mysterious Green Goblin, reluctantly accepts the hospitality of a decorator-approved state prison.
Stan made a funny, and we see Joe on the scene in beat cop clothes, gun drawn, probably the motive for violently assaulting a turnstile hopper.
What are you talking about?
And Joe, he's making light of Kraven's struggles.
It's Kraven, all gift-wrapped and ready for mailing.
And Kraven, he's trapped in a web net, his hands behind his back, on his knees, head down, as the sign of the spider surrounds him, as he shouts that Spidey only beat him because he was careless. Always an excuse. Never just gonna take the L straight.
Having had many long, lonely months of confinement in which to regret his carelessness, we now pick up the threads of our tangled tale here in the present, after our beastie old baddie has paid what is loosely referred to as his debt to society.
Again, how much time do these guys get for attempted murder in the 616 universe? This wasn't even his first offense. He's an original member of the Sinister Six, hunted Spidey in Central Park on a kill contract, and was forbidden from stepping foot in the United States ever again by the United States government. But here he is, and it ain't exactly like he's hard to spot. It's comic book. I know. I'm letting go. I'm coming on. And so's Kraven. He stomps forward with purpose in the panel, on a pier, shouting Spidey's the only person to ever defeat him, so he won't rest until the webhead is defeated. But first,
I'll track down the Green Goblin. He owes me something for the time I spent in jail.
And I just want to say, Spidey's the only man to ever beat him, but Spidey's the only man he ever hunted. This guy was taking out rhinoceroses? Who knows? He was taking out big game animals in Africa before he realized he wanted a bigger challenge. Spidey is the first guy to beat him, but Spidey's the first guy he fought. Either way.
Then, effortlessly breaking into the morgue room of the Daily Bugle, Kraven tears through the back issues until he finds...
Barely 30 minutes out and he's broken into 39th Street, 2nd Avenue, Midtown, limestone building. You can't miss it. Gripping an archived issue of the Daily Bugle, he stares at the headline.
Green Goblin dies in fire. Spider-Man at scene.
The Hunter throws a right at a filing cabinet, obliterating it, pulls a ladder down with his left, and eyes closed in fury, shouts.
Once again, that masked web-slinging weasel has spoiled my plans, and this time he'll pay for it, and he'll pay it full.
Shout out to
First
Alpo.
I need money, and I know just where to get it. Norman Osborn, the Goblin's flunky. He'll pay my price, or die.
On 4, he stalks down a dark New York street, shouting he's not heading all the way up to Westchester, that he's going to go to Osborn's office right here in the city, that it won't take him too long to find it. I imagine he's grabbed the phone book.
But the web of fate has many strands. Even while the super powerful jungle-bred stalker nears his objective, we turn our attention to another scene.
And I want to turn our attention to another scene. I just saw Madam Web. I thought it was a great movie. I don't know what people exactly were expecting for all the harsh reviews it got. It's a prequel to a story that they don't really want to mess with too much, i.e. Spider-Man, especially if he's not going to be in the story. So I thought it was a great story focused on Madam Web and how she gets her powers and how she becomes in charge of the Web of Destiny, which in my opinion is essentially the foundation of the Marvel Comics universe. I love the 3 spiders that she had working with her. I loved how her powers developed. I loved Ezekiel. One of my favorite stories is the Book of Ezekiel in Amazing Spider-Man. That's way down the line, but I thought it was great. I loved that he had all of Spidey's powers, moved like him, and he added a sinister twist to what happens if Spidey really was a villain, because he was not, as Peter is often doing, holding back. He was out there grabbing cars, flipping them, throwing them, mad strong, mad resilient, and none of the responsibility that came with all of his great power. So I thought he was a great villain. I thought the premise was great. I love that Madam Web had ties to Peter's family. I love that she was partnered with Uncle Ben as an EMT driver. I loved her scenes when she was whipping that EMT. For me, it was a great movie. I really enjoyed watching it. So I just wanted to say that. That's my opinion, though. See it for yourself. Make your own judgments. You know, when it comes to Spider-Man, I'm a bit biased. So I'll leave it there. Back to the scene they're talking about. The home of Anna Watson and her new roommate, May Parker. Anna's wearing a purple dress, low-cut V-line, pearls. May's in a brown sweater, probably cashmere, and a green dress, her white hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Anna helps May unpack, telling the woman that it'll be nice that the two of them are living together. They'll have so much to do as a door slams from somewhere off panel. And the incomparable Mary Jane Watson enters, her red hair falling past her shoulders, her fashion on fashionista as usual in a white thigh-length dress with black sleeves and belt and white leather boots. She says she's come to help May unpack, and May, seeing the always smiling MJ, says she wishes Peter were so happy and go lucky. We all know that's not possible. The kid's as neurotic as... Well, there's really no comparison. The kids walk into Rosie's. But MJ puts May's mind at ease. She says Pete's a real swinger and a full-time pussycat. Anna tries to get MJ to help them unpack, but the music just come on over the radio, and the girl's already lost in the rhythm. When May says she's going to call her darling nephew, MJ tells May to remind the kid that they're making the scene tonight. May, always oblivious to the slang young whippersnappers are using, replies,
How nice. It's so rare to find a young lady who's interested in handicrafts.
Seconds later, a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed Peter Parker says,
Pete, razor in one hand, phone line in the other, all smile, says,
You sound great, Aunt May, and I hear some rock and roll in the background. I had a hunch that you and Mrs. Watson were really with it.
The doorbell rings while he's on the phone, and a voice from off panel says they'll get it. Of course, it's his college classmate turned roommate, Harry Osborn. He jokes that May's probably hipper than Pete and rushes to the door, saying he doesn't want to keep Sophia Loren waiting, or worse, Captain Kangaroo. For a spotlight on Sophia Loren, check out Season 1's 22nd episode,
Presenting the Clown and His Masters of Menace,
or
Spionce in the Fleabag 2, rebranded Reloaded,
Here are me and my friend Pete. And
quoted from Wikipedia.
Captain Kangaroo is an American children's television series that aired weekday mornings on the American television network CBS for 29 years, from 1955 to 1984, making it the longest-running nationally broadcast children's television program of its day. In 1986, the American Program Service, now American Public Television, Boston, integrated some newly produced segments into reruns of past episodes, distributing the newer version of the series to PBS and independent public stations until 1993. The show was conceived by Bob Keeshan, who also played the title character, Captain Kangaroo, and who based the show on the warm relationship between grandparents and children. Keeshan had portrayed the original Clarabelle the Clown on NBC's The Howdy Doody Show during the network's early years. Captain Kangaroo had a loose structure built around life in the treasure house, where the captain, the name Kangaroo came from the bigger pockets in his coat, would tell stories, meet guests, and indulge in silly stunts with regular characters, both humans and puppets. Keeshan performed as the captain more than 9,000 times over the nearly 30-year run of the show. The May 17, 1971 episode had two major changes on the show. The treasure house was renovated and renamed The Captain's Place, and the captain replaced his navy blue coat with a red coat. In September 1981, CBS shortened the hour-long show to a half hour, briefly retitled it Wake Up with the Captain, and moved it to an earlier time slot. It was moved to weekends in September 1982 and returned to an hour-long format. CBS canceled Captain Kangaroo at the end of 1984.
Thanks, Wikipedia!
We're not going to judge Harry for being a young adult and watching children's shows. At least, I'm not. I still watch Spider-Man the Animated Series. So, glass houses, am I right? Back to. Either way, in the final panel, Harry pulls the door open to reveal neither Screen Queens or historic children's show host, Norman Osborn. All smiles, enters the apartment, saying he's just stopped by to see how Pete and Harry are settling into their new place. Harry, excited for his dad to meet his new roommate, invites Norman in. On 5, Norman and Peter meet for the second time in their civilian identities, this time without Pete being strapped to a chair watching Goblin Home movies. Pete's thoughts are racing about the vicissitudes of life as he shakes hands with Norman, thanking the man for the apartment and the job offer. If any non-New Yorkers want to know how hard it is to get an apartment or a job that pays well in NYC, Pete's rooming with his arch-enemy's son to save on rent and contemplating taking a job with the man to boot. It's real on this island. Norman, for his part, throws an arm around Harry, telling Pete that the offer still stands, that his company can always use bright science majors like the Prince of Forest Hills. All he has to do is give Harry the word when he's ready, before racing out to catch a jet because he's got business out of town. Busy man. When he's not the Goblin, he's still way past busy enough. Pete, happy with his handiwork, is glad to see that Norman seems to be much kinder to Harry now that he's not a raging goblin psychopath.
But sometimes the past has a way of reappearing when you least expect it.
In the offices of Norman Osborn, we find Kraven in a trench coat. His shoulder muscles are screaming to break free of, enough grease to fry chicken in his slick back hair, talking to a receptionist who looks harried at his arrival. He shouts that he wants to see Norman Osborn. The receptionist tells him the man's out of town for the moment before adding, "Yes, sir, may I ask who's calling? Sir, is anything wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Kraven tells the woman Osborn can't hide from him forever, and understandably, she bolts to the next room. Slamming the door behind her as Kraven snaps.
Running into the next room won't do you any good. Tell them that Kraven will be back. Do you hear? Kraven will be back. Minutes later, back at the Hunter's hidden lair.
Kraven is tossing linens around Chameleon's safe house, shouting that he'll find Osborn no matter the obstacles placed in his way, and Spider-Man's mask is going to rest on his trophy wall, and he never makes the same mistake twice. But you can definitely make a new mistake for the first time, because this guy got a new weapon in his arsenal. I'll let him explain in this, our
Panel of the Week. I was defeated last time because of Spider-Man's greater speed, but I've had months to develop this new weapon, a double-barreled ray which can magnetize his muscular electrolytes. A Cobra quick attack like this and his accursed spider speed will be gone. Then, without his speed, he'll be helpless before my far greater strength and my matchless animal powers.
And where, pray tell, did Kraven install his new double-barreled ray? In the eyes of the lion's head vest he's always wearing. Of course he lets the rays fire at nothing, and of course the rays look like they're coming out of his nipples because comic books. I'm starting to think Kraven a freak nasty. If those rays are shooting from here, an electric charge is almost definitely hitting his nips with every blast. That explains the smile on his face.
But we know you'd never forgive us if we didn't let you see what's cooking at old Empire State U right now. So let's leave Kraven for a moment while we feast our eyes on Gwen Stacy and company.
We find the heartthrob Gwen Stacy in a fire mint green cashmere sweater, purple trim on the cuffs and collar that drops into a low V atop her bust, and a purple pencil skirt surrounded by a group of college guys, letting them know Flash's going away party is tonight, and she expects them all to show face. When one of the guys asks who's going to take Flash's place in her life, she says it seems she's up for grabs. Lying! A lie Harry calls out on 6 as he and Pete walk up holding lunch trays. Harry says Gwen was never interested in Flash, that she needs to admit that he's the secret love of her life. Gwen, quipping, replies that it wouldn't be a secret anymore if she did. And Pete, open vest swag on full display, shoots his shot.
Touche, Miss Stacy. Say, has anyone ever told you that you get prettier every day?
Gwen, going full-on petty mayonnaise, replies,
Only my mirror, Mr. Parker. Whoops, sorry. I've been listening to Mary Jane too long.
Before telling Pete to invite MJ to the party. Pete, a look of disappointment on his face, replies,
Thanks, Gwen. I'm sure MJ would get a big kick out of it. Gwen didn't even give me a chance to ask if she... Oh, what's the use? To her, I'm just another guy named Pete.
When Gwen asks Harry if he's bringing a date, he flirts with her outright, telling her bringing a date would be like bringing a Chevy to General Motors. That's game, Harry. That was smooth. We give it to you. Pete, thirst on Sahara Desert, shoots another shot.
Say, Gwen, how about a soda after class when we compare some notes on English lit? I'm afraid I've gotten a little rusty.
But Gwen ain't got time in her cashmere Kevlar. Her back to Pete, a coy smile on her lips, she takes his shot and delivers one of her own. Below the belt.
Sorry, Pete. I'll be busy getting things ready for Flash's party. I'm sure Mary Jane can help you brush up on your notes. A few hours later, as soon as classes are through, a dramatic figure turns to web swinging as he zooms across town.
We find the king of swing high above the city, a web sack on his back, both hands gripping a web line, shouting he's got to get the pictures of the Shocker to the Daily Bugle before they're out of the news cycle.
And now that we've proven that Jazzy Johnny still remembers how to draw Spidey,
the final panel opens to 39th Street, 2nd Avenue, Midtown, limestone building. You can't miss it. Where Pete's pulling on his goldenrod yellow trench coat. Spotting the newly fiancé Ned Leeds and Betty Brant heading out, he thinks they'd get a charge out of coming to Flash's going away party before JJ tirades from off panel in his office.
Where are you two going? You're supposed to work till noon around here.
When Ned tells the man it is noon, Jameson shouts back that he never could stand clock watchers. On 7, Pete shouts at the duo to hold up, and after exchanging pleasantries, invites the two to Flash's going away party. Betty says they wouldn't miss it for the world, and the two get ghost. Pete enters JJ's office next with a handful of photos of Shocker getting pummeled in New York's Federal Bank. But JJ, sleeves rolled up, cigar in hand, as usual, is gripping his phone receiver and holds a hand up to Pete, shouting,
Shut up! Can't you see I'm on the phone? No, I'm not yelling at you. That pinheaded Peter Parker just came in.
Pete, over the disrespect, says the pinhead will take his pics over to the Globe. And of course JJ says he was kidding, that the kid needs to learn how to take a joke before we see who he's talking to in the next panel. His kid, a one John Jonah Jameson IV. He's sitting in an office in D.C., the Capitol building looming with prestige through the window behind him, and wearing his finest dressed blues and Colgate smile. He says it sounds like the miserable magnate is busy, that he just wanted the man to know everything's okay, and he's going to be rejoining the space team soon. And if you recall, the man's an astronaut, gained super strength from space sports in his travels beyond orbit, lost his damn mind and had it beaten back into him by Spidey back in ASM number 42,
The Birth of a Superhero.
That's season 2's 17th episode.
The misunderstanding, like father, like astronaut.
Back to Jameson, all smile, says he's going to let his son go, but smiling with genuine enthusiasm and love in his eyes, reminds his son that he's a colonel now, but he wants his boy to be a general, because Jamesons are all winners, before hanging up and rounding on Pete.
Now, what do you mean barging into my office that way?
The two go through their familiar back and forth, Jameson wanting the pics immediately, Pete demanding his donuts and dimes, Jameson asking if the kid thinks he'd cheat him.
Every chance you get. But why dwell on high finance when we can switch to Kraven the Hunter?
In the final panel, Kraven leapfrogs the front gate of the Osborn estate as easily as Kevin Young over a hurdle in a 400-meter dash, shouting he's here to see if Osborn is really out of town or trying to hide from him. We turn the page and we're on
The Infinity Page.
Page 8, just in time to witness Kraven smashing through the front door of Osborn Mansion. Gorgeous panel. We don't see much of the mansion, but what we do see, a gold-plated ornate spiral staircase, red walls, and the man's butler in tails, bow tie, Carl Winslow haired, and scared, senseless. Kraven shouts he wants Osborn, and when the butler tells the hunter Osborn's gone on business, Kraven hems him up, lifting the portly man off his feet easily, shouting in his face,
Don't try to lie to me. I can stop a charging bull elephant in its tracks with my own strength. I can defeat a full-grown lion in bare-handed combat. Nobody lies to Kraven.
Wait, Kraven can stop the charge of a bull elephant? Who knew? Either way, the butler urges Kraven to check the mansion himself, Kraven refuses, saying he can smell the man's fear, a fear that makes him too scared to lie before flinging the man aside. So we know now that Kraven can sense lying from the scent a man is giving off. Look, comic books, alright? Realizing the man is lying, Kraven throws a full-on temper tantrum.
He's got to come back sometime, doesn't he? When he does return, you give him a message.
He kicks the legs from beneath the vestibule table and wrenches the rail off the spiral staircase. There are phones flying, lamps falling, porcelain shattering, butlers crawling away for dear life. Mayhem! In the next panel, Kraven storms out shouting for the butler to tell Osborn that he was here. The butler, still prone, reaches for a phone receiver, the wrinkled lines on his forehead pronounced, as he thinks that Kraven's as wild and powerful as a beast he has to warn Mr. Osborn about.
Just forgive us this one additional interruption. You see, Peter Parker goes to so few parties, we just don't want to miss a minute of this one.
And in the final panel, we're across town. We see Pete and Harry getting suited and booted in their apartment. Harry sitting on a bed, tan slacks, white dress shirt, green socks, one foot up on the bed as he ties his shoelaces in the background. He hasn't put on his bow tie yet, but you know it's coming. And in the foreground, Pete in SJB slacks. And we know now Pete's a suspenders guy. There are no belt holes in the slacks. Go ahead, Parker. He got on a white dress shirt as well and is standing in front of a mirror tying a red and black tie. As they get ready, the two converse on their luck. Harry saying between his Gwen and Pete's Mary Jane, the two really got it made. Pete says the two are from Wild City. What does Harry expect?
What's with me? Why do I get all shook up when I hear him call her his Gwen?
Because you're greedy, Pete. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Or maybe you know women ain't property and can't belong to anyone. Either way, the two finish getting ready and hop in Harry's convertible in the space between pages, pulling up on page 9.
Attention, Spider-Files. In case you're wondering what we're making with all the Moon June jazz when we've got a cat like Kraven just waiting to be unleashed. Don't lose your cool. It's all gonna dovetail together and turn into a symphony of action. Or anyway, that's the way we planned it. Smiley.
Harry pulls his white drop top up to a red light to open 9 and spots the heartthrob who has come to play. Disco ball earrings dangling from each ear. She stands with her hands on her hips, wearing a sleeveless yellow, orange, and red knee-high dress, a white leopard print jacket, orange spots surrounded by black, fishnet stockings, and red heels. Style flaring. Harry gobsmacks as if he knew she looked like this, he'd have arrived earlier. Gwen shoots back.
What did you expect me to look like? Yogi Bear?
When Pete says they can put the top of it's too chilly, Gwen won't have it.
Bite your tongue, impetuous one. We night people thrive on moonburns.
The woman is too hot to be bothered by the chill. Love it. And
quoted from Wikipedia.
Yogi Bear is an anthropomorphic animal character who has appeared in numerous comic books, animated television shows, and films. He made his debut in 1958 as a supporting character in the Huckleberry Hound show. Yogi Bear is the first breakout character in animated television. He was created by Hanna-Barbera and was eventually more popular than ostensible star Huckleberry Hound. Much like Bugs Bunny taking over the Looney Tunes franchise, Yogi Bear did the same in Hanna-Barbera. Back to. In January 1961, he was given his own show, The Yogi Bear Show, sponsored by Kellogg's, which included the segments Snagglepuss and Yacky Doodle. Hokey Wolf replaced his segment on the Huckleberry Hound Show. A musical animated feature film, Hey There, It's Yogi Bear, was released in 1964. Yogi was one of the several Hanna-Barbera characters to have a collar. This allowed animators to keep his body relatively static, redrawing only his head in each frame when he spoke. One of the ways Hanna-Barbera cut costs, reducing the number of drawings needed for a 7-minute cartoon from around 14,000 to around 2,000.
Thanks, Wikipedia!
Yogi was voiced most famously by Dawes Butler and inspired by Norton of the Honeymooners. And what was his television show about? Well, him and his good buddy Boo Boo, who lived in Jellystone National Park, spent the majority of their time trying to steal campers' picnic baskets, usually to Boo Boo's timid objections and dodging frenemy Park Ranger Smith. I honestly didn't watch much Yogi Bear as a kid. I was a Looney Tunes guy, but I loved both he and Boo Boo's voices and would impersonate them constantly.
Hey, Boo Boo, we gotta go steal some picnic baskets.
Come on, Yogi.
That's what I got. Back to. Pete gets in the backseat of the car, sitting behind Harry as Gwen climbs into shotgun. Is the kid brooding? Is Yogi Bear gonna get that picnic basket? Of course he's brooding!
It's the same old story of my life, all over again. When I first met Gwen, and she sort of took a shine to me, I was too busy waltzing around with the Molten Man, the Scorpion, and a dozen other baddies to give her the time of day. But now, with everything nice and peaceful, and with Gwen sending me into orbit whenever I look at her, she suddenly forgot my name.
But Pete's gotta push his jealousy out of his mind because Harry's just spotted the incomparable Mary Jane Watson, and she will not be outdone. Diamond-shaped earrings, on. Mod knee-high dress, lime, black, and forest green checkered print, on. Her usual white leather jacket, on. Lime green ankle-high heeled boots, on. her cherry red hair banged and laid flawlessly,
as usual,
walks towards the car as Pete hops out to meet her, thinking the woman's not a bad consolation prize.
She may not grab me as much as Gwen, but nobody can say that gal isn't 100% Dreamville.
Pete may have a sixth sense for danger, but he's oblivious to the scowl Gwen's wearing as she watches Mary Jane trot towards Pete. She may play like she wants nothing to do with Pete, but the invisible lemon that's got her screwing up her face right here determines this is a lie.
And now, to prove this really isn't our version of Peyton Place, we're going to skip the entire ride to the soda parlor and deliver you to the scene. 1, 2, 3.
In the final panel, the quartet pull up to the venue and Gwen has pulled out all the stops. We've got a packed house here. Everyone dressed to the nines. Balloons, a soda fountain station, the works. Betty, Brent, and Ned Leeds are in the building. Betty wondering which of the ladies Pete's interested in that he's just walked in with. Mary Jane gives Gwen props for the turnout and decorations, telling her they're out of sight. Pete says it's a night Flash will remember. Harry, that he never got a send-off like this when he joined the Scouts. Of course he thinks heading overseas to certain death is like joining the Scouts. Clueless and privileged. Gwen says it's no Copacabana, but better than dancing on the sidewalk. And
quoted from Wikipedia.
The Copacabana is a New York City nightclub that has existed in several locations. In earlier locations, many entertainers such as Danny Thomas, Pat Cooper, and the comedy team of Martin and Lewis made their New York debuts at the Copacabana. The Barry Manilow song Copacabana is named after and set in the club. Thanks, Wikipedia! My favorite gangster movie, Goodfellas, is set largely in the Copa, if anybody cares.
We don't.
Shut it, you! Back to.
But then, a moment later,
the man of the hour enters the scene to open 10. Eugene Flash Fashion Unacceptable Thompson in a maroon blazer and black turtleneck. He's immediately surrounded by people clapping him on the shoulders and wishing him well. Eating up the limelight, he shouts,
"Hey, this is too much! Someone must have told you I'm going to win the war single-handed!"
Gwen tells the guy to pretend the jungle is a king-size football field, and Harry chimes in that he shouldn't waste time looking for a goalpost. I want to say this is showing their immaturity and lack of understanding of what war is, but maybe this is how they deal with their nerves and anxiety over the fact that there's a high chance Flash may not come back from this war alive, even higher that he comes back uninjured. Pete, looking on, says,
"He's been a thorn in my side for years, but I bet Flash will make a great soldier. He's got everything it takes."
Before Mary Jane tells him not to waste a beat in the background. In the next panel, Pete and MJ hit the dance floor, and Pete may have agility on best ever, but blamed if the kids got dance moves, because we've got our first ever Page of the Week! As MJ shakes her hips, eyes closed, body grooving to the rhythm, Pete, I kid you not, is moving like a lame business on the dance floor. Just kicking his arms and legs in all sorts of awkward angles. There's a black dude looking on with a giant smile on his face, and I know he's thinking, this white boy ain't got no rhythm.
And you can't teach that.
Harry, watching MJ dominate the dance floor, whispers to Gwen, who's handing out burgers, if she's going to let MJ upstage her this way. When Gwen says MJ is supposed to be handing out burgers with her, Harry replies,
"No chick who can dance like that is going to dish out meatballs."
Gwen gives a sly smirk and pushes the tray of burgers into Harry's hand before hitting the dance floor in the final panel, stealing the show. She's waving arms, she's cha-cha stepping, she's throwing her head back in ecstasy. I imagine she's getting a little twerk going, and the crowd is eating it up.
"Hey, gang, look at Gwen go.
Wowee! If we could package that, we'd be rich.
Back your tigers, give her room.
Come on, let's hear it for the little lady."
Boy, Flash order enlist every day.
On 11, a salty and upstage Mary Jane scowls at Gwen, reminding the woman that she was supposed to be handing out burgers. Gwen, without breaking stride, replies,
"Don't fret, Pet. I saved a few for you."
Random guy number 1 says nobody's thinking about food at a time like this. Pete, smart enough to know better than to pick a side out loud in this moment, picks one in his thoughts regardless.
"And that's the gal I never had time to date. Oh boy."
A moment before Flash walks up and, reading Pete's mind, throws a shot.
Put your eyes back in your head, Parker. You wouldn't stand a chance in that league. She makes other chicks look like they're off the wall. Although, I wouldn't exactly put Mary Jane out to pasture either.
Harry, always down for a messy situation, chimes in.
The way MJ's looking at Gwen, there's liable to be an explosion soon.
"Hang loose, Harry. You don't know how right you are."
In the final panel, Kraven comes crashing through a random wall, sending people scattering as he screams,
If you value your lives, don't anyone move. The son of Norman Osborn is here, and I want him.
As the den devolves into random screams, Flash is the only one in panel looking at Kraven. Everyone else is booking it, and Flash is wondering what the Hunter wants with one of his closest friends. Don't worry, Flash. Kraven is nothing if not a man who gets to the point. And he does! Pete shields MJ stage right in a long horizontal to open 12, thinking,
"Kraven's stronger than a bull elephant. I've got to do something, but I can't go into action like this. Not as Peter Parker."
While Kraven hems up a terrified Harry in a censor, he's shouting,
You're the one I want. I recognize you anywhere. I knew Osborn had a son, and it wasn't hard for the world's greatest hunter to track you here.
And Harry, he's whimpering.
I don't know you. I never saw you. What do you want with me?
And stage left, Flash, enraged, shakes a fist. He's shouting,
Back off, mister! Nobody breaks up my party that way!
In the next panel, Gwen shouts for someone to call the police as Kraven holds Harry up with one arm by the collar, shaking the kid ruefully, barking.
Where's your father? Doc, do you hear? Doc, nobody can defy me!
Flash, star athlete, team guy, future Vietnam private, fearless Spidey booster, etc., 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 rushes forward, attempting to put himself between the people and the danger, shouting that the man can't fight all of them, and takes a whole effortless backhand from Kraven, who asks if a pack of rabbits can hold a lion at bay. Flash goes flying, crashing into a couple of randoms in the next panel, as Kraven decides he's going to kidnap Harry.
That's
all
a
this
life
unfolding,
sentence.
Pete racing away from the danger shouts,
Don't try to stop him. It's hopeless. I'll go for the police.
but you know what he's thinking.
It'll also give me a chance to switch to Spidey. If I move fast enough, I'll catch him outside.
And you know what we're thinking.
Catch me outside, how about that?
In the final panel, Kraven, gripping Harry under his arm like a sack of potatoes, climbs back through the hole he created, shouting that once Osborn knows his son's in danger, the man will come to Kraven. Translation? If you was smart, you'd be shicking me, cause I get tired of looking for you, spray your mama crib and let your ass look for me.
Shout out
Harry,
to 50.
not soft, but not strong, is just beating his fist against Kraven's chest and face futilely, and you know what he's thinking. Elephants!
He looks human, but it's like hitting an elephant's eye. He doesn't even feel it.
On 13, as Kraven breaks north, the most beautiful sound, at least to Harry's ears right now, I'm sure, rings out.
Kraven, you always were a party poop. Anyone else would have waited for the refreshments.
And we see the King of Swing from Forest Hills, Queens, across the street in a construction site, perched on a vertical steel girder of what's soon to be New York's latest skyscraper. Kraven wags an angry fist and screams that he's sworn vengeance.
Vengeance indeed. You want to thank me for keeping you out of circulation so long. Every time you make the scene, you end up in jail.
Kraven is incensed. He tosses Harry aside like so much trash, shouts,
You've always beaten me by trickery, but this time I'm wise to all your stunts.
and lunges towards our hero in the final panel. That's 2 stories on a diagonal. But you know Spidey's agility, best ever. He leaps over Kraven, arms wide, spraying weapons from bolt shooters towards the steel beams, taunting Kraven about the man's miss. Kraven's reply?
In the jungle, it's known. The first blow is meaningless. Only the final smashing attack tells the story.
Translation? Don't talk crap until you win. And we got action. In the space between pages, Spidey's done a loop-de-loop and opens 14 with a dual-footed kick to the man's face while he's still in midair, snapping Kraven's head back while pumping the man for information. Namely, why is Kraven after Norman Osborn so hard? While on the ground, we see Harry reconnect with the ESU cool kids. Gwen, as organized as ever, saying they've got to hide Harry in case Kraven comes after him again. As Flash throws Harry's arm over his shoulder, he and Gwen leading the bow-tied man to safety, Mary Jane points up at the fight, grinning from ear to ear.
Hey, you're missing the whole bit. Like, talk about it happening.
Now you've got to put your imagination to work, because Spidey and Kraven are just crawling and leaping on this structure. Spidey, knowing Kraven's pride is his weakness, is still talking smack. He calls the man Mr. Big in the Jungle. He's calling the man Bush League. He probably calls the man an Indian elephant, because you gotta know, size matters to Kraven. While they're going crazy on the monkey bars, back on the ground, Jameson's demon reporter and secretary extraordinaire are plotting their next moves. Ned tells Betty to get to safety, that he's got to get the story because this is a, quote,
front page extra scoop.
Man called it a front page extra scoop. But Betty's not having it. She says she's going nowhere, that if there's danger to be faced, she and her fiancé are going to share it. Talk about ride or die. But more, talk about character development. When we met Betty, she never wanted Pete running off into the danger because she had a brother who was kind of an idiot, who seemed addicted to the danger, palling around with mobsters and things like that. Now, though, Betty seems to be accepting that the world she lives in is always going to be filled with danger, and she refuses to be a damsel in distress when she's proven she's got moxie. Ned, realizing he's got a real one, says all right, but she needs to stay close.
And so,
As Spidey and Kraven do their dangerous dance in the background, Betty and Ned hit a nearby payphone, and Ned gets right to business.
That's right, JJ. It's Kraven the Hunter, back again. I don't know where he came from, but he's battling Spider-Man right now. So far, it looks like Spidey's fight, but I can't be sure. Kraven hasn't gotten his licks in yet. It's lucky Spider-Man popped up. Kraven was after a kid named Harry Osborn.
JJ in his office, a look of shock on his face, gripping the phone as Foswell holds a newspaper in the foreground, is, for a rare moment, not focused on making money.
Harry Osborn? I know his father, Norman. He's a fellow club member of mine. You stay glued to the spot, Leeds. I'll be right there.
I mean, not focused on making money for the moment at least.
How about pictures? Any sign of Peter Parker around there? Nuts!
That's
Just what I
what
need
he
to know.
says.
Get your coat, Foswell.
Nuts!
We're off to see that webhead get his lumps. I hope Kraven demolishes him.
When Foswell points out Spidey's the good guy, Jameson spits.
Say that again, and you'll be back covering cake bake contests. Now let's go!
He throws his
one
hat
of
on
the
in the space
Mocus
between
Man's a
pages
cake
and pulling
boss
his coat on
reviews.
to open 15. Foswell, a step behind him, continues his tirade, shouting at his employees to hold the presses until he calls. Busy man, way past busy enough, but still has time to take shots at our friend.
And if that pinhead Parker calls in, tell him not to show his dumb-looking face around here if he has any photos of Kraven for me. Okay, that's it. Get back to work. We've got a paper to put out.
The last thing on Pete's mind is photos, I'm sure, as we find him upside down above Kraven. He's getting worried, thinking the man is tireless, and he's got to find a way to put him down for good as Kraven advances again, and chided by the web-slinger, jumps from the wooden floor he's on towards his enemy. And his enemy? You know Spidey's got to quit.
If you want me, Cravey baby, come and get me.
And Kraven misses again.
Once I get my hands on you, I'll... Ugh!
Tisk. Didn't anyone ever tell you not to end a sentence with an expletive? I can tolerate your nastiness, but bad grammar? Unforgivable.
Spidey, the grammar police. Kraven plummets towards the ground, but no, he's got the agility of a jungle cat. He tucks, rolls, and lands on his ballet slippers easily.
At that very moment, in answer to his butler's urgent summons, a puzzled Norman Osborn hails a cab at Kennedy Airport.
Osborn is playing no games. His briefcase in hand, he grabs the handle of a yellow taxi cab, telling the driver he'll double the man's fare if the cabbie can get him to Westchester inside of the hour. And if you ain't from New York, you better know a cabbie promised donuts is a bad man.
Hop in and buckle up, mister. You got yourself a deal.
Translation? Challenge accepted. On 16, the cabbie staring at Osborn in the rear view tells the man that they don't have to pass through Midtown because Kraven's tearing up the place. Of course Osborn wants to head there now, but the cabbie ain't having it. He says that idea
It may not be healthy, pal.
Osborn says he'll triple the fare.
That's healthy enough for me.
The cabbie proving that NYC is as my nana used to say, money talks, bullshit runs a marathon.
And as the taxi races along the Grand Central Parkway,
Kraven is hopping again, but this time, instead of leaping directly at Spider-Man who's standing horizontally on a vertical steel beam, he grabs the girder stage right of our hero and using his momentum, swings up and under the beam, connecting with Spidey's stomach with both feet, sending the hero falling towards the ground where 3 beat cops have just shown up. Spidey, reflexes as sharp as ever, grabs Kraven's lion's mane vest by the mane on the way down, pulling the man with him, shouting that the mane may not be mod, but it really grabs him. The
Or
two
vice
land on the
versa.
floor of the unfinished building to open 17. Spidey pressing Kraven for information again on why the man is interested in Osborn. Kraven telling Spidey nothing except he's going to polish him off. Meanwhile, JJ and Foswell have just arrived on scene, and as usual, JJ wants the two combatants to finish each other off. Foswell reminding JJ that Spidey saved Osborn's son. JJ, as usual, saying this doesn't mean anything, that Spidey did it for public sympathy and he can't fool him. Back in the thick of it, Spidey's going on the offensive in earnest. He leaps forward and snaps Kraven's head back with a lunging haymaker, but Kraven eats the blow, screaming.
You just sealed your doom, you gibbering fool. I planned to defeat you without any weapons, but now I've changed my mind.
The man installed his nipple laser specifically for a moment like this and lets the beams fly in the final panel, hitting Spidey full on, casting the hero in a red glow, stopping him in his tracks. Spidey thinking,
Feels as though all my muscles have turned to mush.
Kraven goes on the attack. On 18, he bounced towards Spidey who was frozen in place.
And now, the long-awaited finish.
My brain knows what to do, but my body won't or can't respond.
In the gutter between panels, Kraven's on him. And in the next, we find Kraven kneeling, his left knee pinning down Spidey's right arm, Spidey on his back, Kraven just letting his fist fly, cracking the hero across the jaw, left, left, screaming.
All it will take is one nerve punch, the same blow with which you can paralyze a charging
Elephant?
Bengal tiger.
Ooh, curveball. But Kraven, much like the jungle cats he's used to hunting, shouts,
There, now I can finish you at my leisure. You're all set up for the kill.
Translation? He wants to play with his food. Believe it or not, this fight is over.
but then, suddenly, the sharp eyes, the jungle-bred senses of the deadly hunter perceive the arrival of another figure.
As Kraven stands over a groggy Spider-Man on the street below, Norman Osborn's just pulled up in and hopped out of that yellow taxi, racing anxiously towards Harry, who for whatever unknown reason is back outside with Flash Thompson. Norman asks Harry if he's alright, and Harry, spotting his dad, says he's fine now. Norman, genuinely confused, calls Kraven a madman. A moment before a bowl of line wraps around him, tossed by Kraven. Harry shouts "Dad" and races forward, but it's too late. Norman's yanked from his feet and pulled up towards Kraven, who shouts he doesn't care if Green Goblin is dead. He wants his money and he's going to collect it from Osborn. Norman, completely confused, of course replies,
"Goblin? Money? What are you talking about?"
But Kraven won't be deterred. He says the man can't save himself by acting dumb. He pulls Osborn up onto the ledge of 19 and, gripping the bound man by his collar, wags an angry fist.
20,000 doesn't mean that much to me, and I know it's chicken feed to a man like you, but it's the principle of the thing. Nobody breaks a promise to Kraven the Hunter. Nobody!
When Osborn shouts that he's never promised the man anything, Kraven grabs him by both collars and shakes the sweating Osborn ruefully.
Don't make me beat it out of you. My jungle instinct can sense when someone is lying, and you don't remember. You don't know anything about it. You're telling the truth. It's not possible. I remember you. I spoke to you. And yet, I don't know how, but you're the wrong one.
He tosses Osborn onto the floor, shouting that the Green Goblin must have tricked him, but the man's dead now and he'll never get answers. As for Osborn, the man is in luck because
a jungle beast does not attack without reason, and Kraven no longer has a reason.
Turning his back on Osborn, he raises both fists in the air, and I imagine his lion's mane fluttering from a light breeze. He shouts that he got what he truly came for, defeating the Amazing Spider-Man. And Spidey, he's gripping the back of his head, the stars dancing around his eyes starting to fade, ready for round 2. But Kraven, the wind in his belt already, thinks it's time to take his ball and go home. He breaks south, while Spidey pushes back up onto his feet, thinking he's got to stop the man, but fails to realize that Osborn's on the floor beside him, struggling to get to his own feet.
But before Spidey can make another move,
Osborn, his arms still bound, falls from the ledge backwards and heads first. This could be the end of Norman Osborn.
Dad! Oh no!
Osborn! And the King of Swing does exactly that. Spraying a web line in the space between pages, he swan dives towards Osborn to open 20, shouting to the man to go limp, snatching his former nemesis from the air easily. He lowers the man down towards the street on a web line, and Web swings away in the next panel. As Harry and Flash rush forward to help the man down, Gwen a step behind them. Flash shouting, as he often does, about Spidey's greatness.
Did you see him? Did you see old Spidey in action? He's the greatest!
When Norman says the young hero saved his life, Jameson won't hear of it. The two begin an argument about Spidey's real motives before JJ tells Norman he'll give the guy a lift home. Pete, the danger gone, pops back up on scene, a fact not lost on Flash Thompson.
Well, look who's here. Now that the action's over, Pewdie Parker himself.
But of course, Pete's got an excuse in the chamber.
I didn't have my camera with me. Tried to rent one fast, but couldn't find the store in time. Guess I missed the whole thing, huh? That ought to sound convincing enough for everyone.
MJ says the fight was a gasser. Gwen, that this will be a send-off Flash will remember. Pete, a look of concern on his face, remembers what the day was about. Flash heading out to Vietnam, and extends a hand to shake the Emperor of Foolsville.
That's right. I almost forgot. You leave tomorrow. For the service. I want to wish you all the best, Flash. Something tells me you've got what it takes to come out on top, fella. And I'm betting you do.
Flash, smiling, replies,
You know something, Parker? Every so often I figure you're not as square as I thought. Take good care of the chicks for old Flasheroo while I'm gone here. Hope I'm not squeezing your hand too hard. Cause a Spider-Man you ain't.
if he only knew.
Finally, the banter dies away, the crowd thins out, and a lonely, thoughtful figure silently trudges homeward.
In the shadow of a large spider signal, Pete walks with his head down, his jacket draped over his shoulder, his thoughts racing.
He was probably my greatest fan. If only I could have told him who I really am. Just once. But why am I thinking of him in the past tense? He'll come back. He'll make it. Somehow. The good guys always win. Don't they?
No, Pete, they don't. A scream caption box closes the issue.
Next, the wings of the vulture.
And we're out! A lot of plot threads unraveling in this one for the future. I'm sure Norman Osborn is going to be wondering for a long time to come what he could have done to piss off Kraven the Hunter. And speaking of the Hunter, he's still at large. What does this mean for the King of Swing from Forest Hills, Queens? Only time will tell. At least in Pete's personal life, good problems abound. Y'all saw the salt Gwen and Mary Jane were throwing at each other? Talk about spicy. And talk about peacocking. Them girls were out on that floor shaking her tail feathers something fierce. Y'all know the spot in my heart for MJ softer than brie cheese in the sun in the dog days of summer. But blame if Gwen ain't coming to play. Like I said, good problems. And bad ones. Flash is going off to what will come to be known as the greatest military blunder in United States history in the form of the Vietnam War. A war that nearly tore our country apart at the seams. I just finished watching the Vietnam War, a docuseries on PBS directed by Ken Burns and Lynn Novick, and if I can tell you anything, I can say the chances of Flash coming back from this war unscathed as a lowly grunt are highly unlikely. I mentioned it before, but I want to reiterate. The official death toll for American soldiers, according to United States National Archives, stands at 58,220 soldiers. The amount of wounded soldiers is estimated at anywhere from 150 to 300,000 soldiers. As the official troop strength of American soldiers was listed at around 540,000, it's safe to say very few soldiers walked away from this war unscathed, or at all. If you recall, back in Amazing Spider-Man number 38,
Just a guy named Joe.
the GOAT Steve Ditko's last issue, Pete was accosted by some protesters who asked him to join their protest. He refused then, which made me think Pete may have been for the war in Vietnam around that time. But the closing panel of this one, the way he has a nagging worry, the way he asks if the good guys always win instead of knowing the answer, the way he is already thinking of Flash in the past tense, all kind of clue me in that those Stan, Steve, John, and company were much too savvy to express their views on the war outright. Pete's trepidation was shared by many Americans at this time as the death toll climbed and no end to the war was readily in sight. Flash, for all his trashy fashion and attempts to bully our friend, was more loyal to Spider-Man than anybody up to this point, and it's already weighing on Pete's mind that he may never see the guy again. A disconcerting thought, to be sure. Next episode, we find the Vulture on his deathbed. But no worries, as long as there's a Silver Age Spider-Man, there'll be a Vulture in disguise trying to turn him into Carry-On. Join us next time for Amazing Spider-Man number 48,
The Wings of the Vulture.
That's the main episode this week. And that's true. That's the main episode, but there is more Me and My Friend Pete available for your listening pleasure right now. If you sign up to patreon.com/HSPP in the Keykeeper or High Council tiers, patrons have a vault filled with bonus episodes covering comic book stories from all over the multiverse of comic book universes. Next bonus episode, we're in the Top Cow universe with Witchblade number 118. Question: what happens when the sins of the father make the son a powerhouse? The son goes hunting for a Pizzini Panini. Are you done? Baby, I haven't even started yet. Witchblade Volume 1, number 118.
Advent Part 3.
Coming soon. If you become a patron before ASM number 50, you receive a thank you gift from me and my friend Pete for being a supporter during Season 2. Let's keep these good times rolling. You won't regret it. You got questions? Send them to me in myfriendpete@gmail.com and I'll go digging for the answers. Follow us on Instagram at MNMFP_podcast. The panel of the week can be found at patreon.com/HSPP. Thank you so much to all our patrons. We couldn't do it without you and we wouldn't want to if we could. All that said, that's all that said. Please like, please comment, please share, please take care, and please think of the world and be true to yourself. That dusty trails are calling, but there's no use stalling, cause you know the tagline for the people. With great power, baby, you gotta make sure you're being responsible. I'm out of here.